Happy New Year's from us at SmoothBrainEDH. We have a super fun game to show you all today, so let's get to these deck introductions. Up first is Ethan, playing Pia Nalaar, Console of Revival. Ethan has made it a point to let us know that this deck does not go infinite. It's cast from exile and Thopter aggro. Up next is Seth, piloting his Zur the Enchanter list. This is an Astral Slide cycling list, wanting to use said enchantment to blink creatures for loads of value. Our third player today is Caden, on Atraxa, Praetor's Voice. This is a Super Friends deck, wanting to accrue value from a variety of planeswalkers and overwhelm his opponents. Last up today is Jason, on his Najeela, the Blade Blossom list. This is his $100 budget Kindred Warriors deck, but don't let that fool you. This deck packs quite a punch and can easily overwhelm and overrun his opponents. We're about to get to that game, but before that, go ahead and like and leave us a comment letting us know which deck you're rooting for. We have links to our socials, public Discord server, Decklists, and Patreon in the description. Our channel is partnered with Dragon Shield, so if you're looking to pick up any new sleeves or Magic-related product, check out our affiliate link in the description. Thanks to Dragon Shield also for giving us the code SMOOTH5, so use that for 5% off your entire order at checkout. We are also partnered with Inked Gaming. Check out the affiliate link below if you want to pick up any custom playmats. Now, on to the video.
Looks like Ethan wins the die roll and he starts off with Windbrisk Heights, and he'll hide away a card. The turn is then passed to Seth, and he plays his Lonely Sandbar and passes. Caden will play and fetch with Fabled Passage for a forest, and then he passes to Jason, who plays Jungle Shrine and passes to Ethan, who will just play a mountain, cast his Talisman, and then pass to Seth, who just plays Secluded Step and passes. Caden will play a tapped Godless Shrine and pass, and then Jason will play a Land of War Wastes and cast Fellwar Stone, and then pass to Ethan. Then he'll play Clifftop Retreat as land for turn, then cast his commander, Pia Nalaar, Console of Revival, and then he'll cast Reckless Impulse, exiling 2 lands from the top of his library, and he can play those till the end of his next turn. The turn is then passed to Seth, and he'll start off with Sea of Clouds, and then he'll tap for 3 and cast Tribute Mage. This tutors Fluctuator to his hand. The turn is then passed to Caden, and he'll start off with a Sea of Clouds that, in his own words, is way cooler than Seth's. Then he'll tap for 3 and cast a Cultivate. He declares he's going to find an island to the battlefield tapped, and a plains to his hand, and he'll pass the turn while searching. Jason starts off with a Sulphurous Springs, then he'll tap for 4 and cast Neheb, Dreadhorde Champion. The turn is then passed to Ethan, and he'll start off by playing Great Furnace as land for turn, and this was one of the cards in exile, so he'll make a Thopter from it. Then after this, he'll tap for 5 and drop Plargan Nassari. Jason will then be hit for 1 in the air. Then I'll pass to Seth, who starts off with his Exotic Orchard, and then he'll tap for 4 and drop the guy, Zur. The turn is then passed to Caden, and he'll start off with a Flooded Strand as land for turn. Then he taps for 4 and casts Atraxa, Praetor's Voice, and then the turn is passed to Jason, who will immediately move to combat and swing for 5 trample at Seth. Seth doesn't block, so he takes the 5, and Neheb will trigger, so Jason discards Goblin Cratermaker, Vivid Marsh, and Den Protector. Then he'll draw 3 and add 3 red mana. He'll use 1 of that red and tap for 2 more green to cast Champion of Lamholt, and then he'll drop Najeela, and the champion gets a counter. And since there's an Atraxa out, Jason is also able to cast his Okame Adversary, and the champion gets another counter. The turn is then passed to Ethan, but Caden decides to stop on end step to fetch for a Zoggoth Triome. Now on Ethan's upkeep, Plargan Nassari trigger. Ethan hits an Uba Mask, Seth a Censor, Caden an Arcane Signet, and Jason Quetzal's Flanker. Ethan lets Caden choose what he can't cast, and Caden chooses Uba Mask, and Ethan will cast the Arcane Signet and Quetzal's Flanker. He'll get 2 Thopters off this, and then he'll gain 2 and scry 2, and 1 goes to the bottom. Then he'll move to his main phase and cast Shared Animosity. Then he'll move to combat and swing 3 Thopters at Jason. Shared Animosity will make them 3/1s, so Jason will take 9 damage. And then, because Ethan just wants to play all of his opponent's cards during a webcam game, he'll activate Windbrisk Heights and cast Stolen Strategy. And then the turn is passed to Seth, and he'll start off with a basic Plains as land for turn. Then he'll move to combat and swing for 1 in the air at Ethan with Zur, attack trigger, and this will tutor Out of Time to the battlefield. When it ETBs, there's a trigger that will phase out everything, and Ethan will respond to it by path to exiling his own commander. This exiles Pia, and he'll put her in the command zone, then he'll tutor a basic to the battlefield tapped, and then all creatures are phased out. And Out of Time will have 12 counters on it. After this, Seth will cast Fluctuator, then Faith of the Devoted, and then the turn is passed to Caden, who starts off with a basic Plains as land for turn. Then he'll tap for 4 and cast Teferi, Master of Time. He's immediately upticked, and Caden will draw a card and discard a Plains. He'll then pass the turn to Jason, and on Jason's upkeep, Caden will uptick Teferi, discarding a Swamp. Then on his main phase, Jason will cast Aftermath Samut. She has haste, so Jason will move to combat and hit Caden for 2, and he'll draw a card off this. Post-combat, Jason plays a forest and then casts Mirror Entity, and then he'll pass the turn to Ethan. On upkeep, Stolen Strategy triggers, and the only castable cards are Spark Double from Caden and New Perspectives from Seth. After this, Ethan will play a Plains' Land for a turn, then recast Pia. Then he'll cast his Wild Magic Sorcerer, and then the turn is passed to Seth. But on Ethan's end step, Caden will uptick Teferi and discard Tevish Sot. Now on Seth's turn, he'll pay 2 life to cycle a Street Wraith. So he'll draw a card and then pay 1 to Faith of the Devoted and drain everyone for 2. He'll then repeat this song and dance again by recycling Rune of Protection artifacts. Then he plays a basic island as land for turn. After this, he'll tap for 3 and cast Grasp of Fate. Caden will respond by activating his Teferi. He'll draw a card and then discard Oath of Teferi. It'll resolve and exile Teferi, Samut, and Stolen Strategy. And then the turn is passed to Caden. He'll start off with a Morphic Pool. He'll then cast Liliana of the Last Hope, and he'll immediately uptick it to kill Mirror Entity. After this, he'll cast Birds of Paradise, and then a Broker's Ascendancy. He'll then move to his end step and counters all around. Now on Jason's turn, he'll play a Vivid Crag as land for a turn, and then he'll cast Raider's Spoils. The turn is then passed to Ethan, and he'll immediately move to combat and swing for 4 at Jason and 2 Commander at Seth. Post-combat, Ethan will cast Light Up the Stage, and this will exile Brea's Apprentice and Blasphemous Act. He'll cast the Apprentice, and he'll have 2 cast triggers, a Cascade and a Thopter. The Cascade will hit Wayfarer's Bauble, and since it's also cast from exile, he'll get another Thopter. The Apprentice will then resolve, and he gets a 3rd Thopter. Then after this, he'll tap for 2 and cast Steel Overseer. Then he'll pass the turn, but Seth cycles Hieroglyphic Illumination on end step. Then he'll play Hall of Heliod's Generosity as land for turn, and then he'll slam Approach of the Second Sun, putting a big old target on his back. Then the turn is passed to Caden, and he'll start off by tapping for 5 and paying 2 life to cast Vraska, Betrayal's Sting. And she'll be zeroed to draw a card, lose a life, and proliferate all of his counters. Then he'll pay 2 more life and tap 3 mana to cast Tezzeret's Gambit, drawing 2 cards and proliferating again, which means he is now able to ultimate his Liliana. And you better believe he does, so now he's got the zombie emblem. He'll then move to his end step and make 2 zombies, and then Broker's Ascendancy will put counters on everything. Now on Jason's turn, he'll play a Carpless Forest as land for turn, and then he'll just pass to Ethan, who cracks his Wayfarer's Bauble for a tapped basic on end step. Then Ethan will move to his turn and activate Steel Overseer. This will put a +1/+1 counter on all of his artifact creatures. Then he'll activate Brea's Apprentice to sacrifice the Steel Overseer to exile a Smuggler's Share off the top of his library. He'll cast it, which will get him a Cascade trigger and a Thopter, and the Cascade will hit a Reckless Fireweaver, which gets him another Thopter. Ethan will then move to combat, and he swings his counterless Thopters at Vraska, and then everything else at Seth. So that's a total of 10 damage going at Vraska, and 24 at Seth. There are no blocks around the table, so that's a lot of damage. Man, that Shared Animosity is putting in a lot of work. And then the turn is passed to Seth, and he'll start off by slamming a Cataclysmic Gearhulk. So when it resolves, each player will choose an artifact, creature, and enchantment, there's no planeswalkers, that they control, and sacrifice the rest. Ethan will respond to the ETB trigger by casting Commune with Lava X's4. This will exile Boros Signet, Thought Vessel, Plains, and Skullclamp. He can play those on his next turn. Now on to the Gearhulk choices. Seth chooses Fluctuator, Out of Time, and Cataclysmic Gearhulk. Hayden chooses his Birds of Paradise and Broker's Ascendancy. Jason chooses his Lonely Enchantment. And Ethan will choose Pia Nalaar, Shared Animosity, and Brea's Apprentice. And everything else is sacrificed, which means everything under the Grasp of Fate will come back, but I don't think Ethan heard this when it was said. He does realize it later though, don't worry. After this, Seth will cast Escape Protocol, and with a Cataclysmic Gearhulk out, that's actually pretty scary. Seth will then pass the turn, but on end step, Caden upticks Teferi to draw a card and discard Elvish Mystic. And then Caden will slam Liliana Dreadhorde General. Caden will then float a white off of his Birds of Paradise, then downtick Lily to cause everyone to sacrifice 2 creatures. He'll draw a card off of this, and then he'll play an Exotic Orchard as land for turn. Then he'll cast Flux Chandler. Hey, that's me. Then he upticks Teferi to draw a card and discard Ickermoon Gauntlet. He'll then move to his end step and get 2 zombies, and then counters are shared all around. Then, still on end step, Jason will utter end Out of Time, exiling it, and everything suddenly phases back in. And this is when Ethan realizes he should have his Stolen Strategy. Jason will then move to his upkeep, and Caden decides to downtick Teferi to phase out Najeela. Jason will then just move to combat and swing for 13 damage at Seth, and because of Champion of Lamholt, Seth can't block. So he'll just take the damage, and Jason will lose 3 life and draw a total of 4 cards off of this. Then he'll discard 3 cards to Neheb and draw 3 more and make 3 red mana. He'll then cast a Soul Ring, then drop Shamanic Revelation. This will gain him 8 life and draw him 3 cards. Then he'll play a Plains' land for turn, and then the turn is passed to Ethan. And he's got a couple upkeep triggers. He'll resolve Stolen Strategy first, and castable cards are Commander Sphere and Swords to Plowshares. Then Plargan Nasari will trigger, and Ethan exiles Skyhunter Strike Force, Angel Song, Oko Thief of Crowns, and Druid's Repository. And Jason will choose Skyhunter Strike Force as the spell that can't be cast. So then Ethan will cast the Oko and the Repository for free. After this, Ethan will move to his main phase and cast Pia Nalaar again. Ethan's got a lot of cards in exile he can cast this turn, folks, so expect a lot of Thopters. He'll start off by playing a Plains from exile, getting another Thopter. Then a Thought Vessel, more Thopter. Then Skull Clamp, more Thopter. And Caden will respond to this by upticking to Fairy to draw a card, and then he'll discard Urza Assembles the Titans. After this, Ethan will uptick Oko, targeting Atraxa. Ethan will then move to combat and swing 5 Thopters at Caden, 1 at Seth, and everything else at Jason. And Druid's Repository will trigger 9 times. And Shared Animosity will also trigger a bunch of times. Ethan will then remove 1 counter from Druid's Repository to cast Jason's Swords to Plowshares on Xur. And there is a missed Pia Nalaar trigger. There are absolutely no blocks, so when damage goes through, Jason will take 10, Seth will take 6, and Caden will take 30. And this means Seth and Caden are knocked out. Post-combat, Ethan will remove a counter from his repository to float a mana and Skull Clamp Kutzil's Flanker to draw 2 cards. He'll then cast a Soul Ring, then Clamp a Thopter, then Clamp a Thopter, then Clamp a Thopter, then cast Boros Signet and make a Thopter, and then he'll pass the turn to Jason. And Najeela phases in. He'll then play a basic Forest as land for turn, and then cast Kathar's Crusade, and then a Mindblade Render. Ethan will respond to this by casting Generous Gift on the Kathar's Crusade. It's destroyed, Jason gets an Elephant, and Champion of Lambholt will grow. Then the Mindblade Render will resolve and the champion gets another counter. Jason will then move to combat, and in Begin Combat step, Ethan will Swords to Plowshares Najeela. So she's exiled and Jason will gain 4, then he'll swing for 15 at Ethan, and Ethan will just take it. Combat damage triggers. Jason will lose a total of 4 life, and draw a total of 5 cards. Then to Neheb, he'll discard 3 cards, draw 3 cards, and float 3 mana. After this, he'll cast Masked Vandal, and when it ETBs, he'll exile Kutzil's Flanker from his graveyard to exile Druid's Repository, and this will also trigger his champion. Jason will then cast Alesha, who smiles at death, champion trigger, then he'll play Opulent Palace as land for turn, and then the turn is passed to Ethan. He's got a couple upkeep triggers. Stolen Strategy will exile a land, well that's useless, and then Plargan Nasari exiles Stroke of Midnight and Lotus Petal, and Jason says, no Stroke of Midnight. So Ethan will cast the Lotus Petal from exile, which gets him another Thopter. Then he'll cast Professional Facebreaker, then Alabu, Ancient Witness. Ethan will then move to combat, and Jason stops at the beginning of combat to mortify Shared Animosity, and he takes 1 to a Pain land. Then Ethan will declare attacks, and it'll be all 5 of his Thopters. Alabu will trigger, and Ethan makes sure all artifacts that can tap are tapped. And after counting up, Ethan gets to deal 9 damage to Jason's face and scry 9. And Ethan will put 8 cards on bottom. Jason shows Ethan the Lightning Bolt he can use to stay at 1, but Ethan shows the top card of his library that he can get off the Professional Facebreaker, and it's Delayed Blast Fireball. So Jason sees there's no way he can get out of this, so he'll scoop it up to Ethan and his Thopter army. Congrats, man. What an absolutely crazy game. So much happened, and Ethan was able to take the victory. Let us know what you guys thought of this game down in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe if you hadn't already. Check out all our links too, but man, I'm burnt out from editing this week. I'm gonna get going. Hope you all have a smooth New Year's.